If you love learning English in a fun and exciting way, stories are your best friends. Today, we're walking through London with Ryan, discovering mysteries hidden in the city's reflections. As you listen, you're not just hearing a story, you're learning useful English naturally and without effort. Isn't that amazing? If you enjoy this journey, please hit subscribe and like, so you never miss our daily videos full of stories and learning. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what part of the story surprised you the most or where you would like to explore next. It was still early when Ryan stepped out of the small cafe just off the embankment. The sky above London was grey and heavy, and the air had that familiar weight to it, the kind that carried a soft chill and a scent of the river. He zipped up his jacket and tucked his hands into his pockets as he turned left, walking slowly toward the edge of the Thames. It wasn't planned. He hadn't meant to walk that far. But sometimes, when the city was quiet and the world hadn't fully woken up, London felt like it was breathing differently. That's what he liked. That space between the rush hours, the silence before the movement. And today, it was just him, the sidewalk, and the river. The Thames looked darker than usual, but still calm. The tall glass buildings of the South Bank mirrored off its surface like ghost towers, their reflections swaying gently with the water's motion. He stopped for a moment, just standing there, watching how the water twisted and caught the light. There was something hypnotic about it. To his right, the London Eye stood still, its giant frame like a watchful eye. Further along the river, bridges connected the two sides of the city like stitching on an old coat. Everything felt still, yet alive. Ryan walked slowly, not in a hurry to get anywhere. He passed joggers, tourists with cameras hanging from their necks, and early workers sipping coffee. None of them noticed him, and he liked it that way. He wasn't trying to be invisible, but being unnoticed gave him space to observe, to think. The path curved slightly, and he followed it naturally. A group of school kids rushed past him, their laughter echoing in the crisp air. Their energy was like a sudden wave in his still morning. He smiled to himself. That sound, carefree, light, untamed, reminded him of home, though he hadn't been there in a long time. As he passed beneath the shadow of a tall building, he looked up. The sunlight, weak but golden, bounced off the glass in a way that created strange shapes on the sidewalk. Triangles, diamonds, stretched rectangles, dancing faintly as the clouds moved above. He followed them with his eyes, almost like following footsteps. That's when he noticed something odd. The reflection on the water didn't match what he saw above. It wasn't immediate, but the more he looked, the more he realized. The buildings looked a little off. As if one tower was taller in the reflection than in real life. Or the curve of the shard appeared more twisted than it should be. He frowned and took a few steps back, then forward again. No change. Same odd illusion. Maybe it was the angle. Or maybe his mind was playing tricks. He rubbed his eyes, looked again. The reflections were strange. Beautiful, but strange. He kept walking. The street sounds grew louder the closer he got to the next bridge. Traffic hummed above him, a steady background noise. But as he stepped under the bridge's shadow, it all went quiet again, like stepping into a bubble. It felt like the world had paused for a second. He looked at the water again. And there it was, a shadow. Not just from a cloud. Not from a bird or a boat. A long, thin shadow stretching across the water, coming from nowhere. He turned around, scanning the buildings. Nothing. No object matching the shape. No crane, no pole, no line of any kind. He moved to a different angle. The shadow moved with him, slightly, like it was aware. He stared at it, heartbeat slowing. It wasn't scary, not yet. Just strange. He thought of all the stories people tell about cities. Secret tunnels. Hidden signs. Messages left in the architecture for only certain eyes to see. He never believed them. But now, he wasn't so sure. A pigeon flapped loudly behind him and broke the tension. He turned, laughed at himself, and kept walking. As the path opened up near the Tate Modern, the wide space gave him more sky, more water, more silence. He took a deep breath. The river smell was stronger here, not dirty, but deep. Like earth and stone and stories. Ryan paused again, this time near a railing, and leaned forward, staring at the water. A soft wave touched the stone wall below him. He watched the foam swirl, and again, the reflection of a tower caught his eye. This time, the top of the tower seemed to shimmer, like it was on fire. But the building itself stood cold and still. He blinked. The shimmer was gone. He told himself it was just the light. Just the city being dramatic. But part of him felt something else. Like the reflections were alive in a way the buildings weren't. Like the river was remembering things the city had forgotten. He didn't tell anyone, of course. Not his friends. Not his co-workers. Who would believe him? It was probably nothing. But still, he walked slower after that. He kept his eyes on the water, letting it guide him, letting the city show him what it wanted. It didn't feel random anymore. His feet seemed to know where to go. His steps matched the rhythm of the river. He passed old stone walls covered in moss. He passed modern glass cafes filled with silent laptops and busy hands. Everything around him felt like part of a bigger story, one he didn't understand, but one he wanted to follow. As he approached the Millennium Bridge, the air felt colder. A soft wind blew from the east, carrying something he couldn't name. He zipped his jacket higher and stepped onto the bridge. Beneath him, the river widened, and the reflections stretched long and thin. He stopped in the center of the bridge, looked down. There it was again, a shadow, different this time. Not a shape. Not an object. More like a figure. Standing still in the reflection. No one stood on the river. No one floated below. Yet, in the water, something waited. His breath caught. He leaned in, staring hard. But the wind pushed harder now, and a large group of people rushed past him, shaking the bridge. By the time he looked again, the reflection was gone. Maybe it was never there. Or maybe the river was just saying hello. He didn't run. He didn't even hurry. But his steps were different after that. More curious. More alert. He walked on, toward Tower Bridge, toward whatever else the city had to show him. As Ryan continued along the Thames path, the city slowly began to shift. More people appeared, runners, couples walking hand in hand, delivery bikes weaving through narrow turns. The river beside him kept flowing, unbothered, ancient. But Ryan couldn't stop thinking about the reflections. He passed a group of street performers near London Bridge. One man was dressed like a silver statue, completely still. Another juggled knives while blindfolded. But Ryan barely noticed them. His eyes kept drifting back to the water. Every now and then, he'd catch a glint or flicker, a tower too bright, a shadow too sharp, a figure that didn't match the world above. When he finally stopped to rest, it was near a small section of the path where the railing was lower. From here, the river opened up into a wider view of both the north and south sides of the city. He could see St. Paul's behind him and the tall buildings of Canary Wharf far in the distance. But again, it was the water that drew him in. He leaned over the edge, elbows resting on the cold steel. And there it was. A reflection that didn't belong. The buildings in the river were correct, same shapes, same angles, but one of them had a door at its top. A narrow, black rectangle, just sitting there at the peak of the tower's mirrored image. Ryan looked up. The real building had no door. Just smooth glass, all the way up. But in the reflection, the door was clear. Still. Waiting. He straightened slowly, unsure what to make of it. It wasn't scary. Just strange. And a little too real. For a few seconds, he just stood there, heart beating louder in his chest, brain working overtime to make sense of what he'd seen. But logic couldn't touch it. The door didn't exist. And yet it did. Was the river playing tricks? Was the city alive in its reflection? Or was something watching from below? Ryan shook the thought away. He stepped back from the railing and kept walking. But now, everything felt different. It was like he had slipped into a version of London that lived just under the surface. A mirrored world that only revealed itself if you slowed down long enough. Not the London of busy schedules and tube stations and coffee to go, but a quieter, older London, one full of stories that had never been told out loud. As he passed a long brick wall along the path, the sunlight broke through the clouds again. Shadows danced across the surface, twisting lines that looked almost like writing. Ryan paused. For a moment, he thought he saw letters. Shapes that almost spelled words. He tilted his head. Squinted. Gone. Just the shadows of branches now. Still, he felt something familiar in them. Like he was on the edge of remembering a dream he hadn't had yet. By the time he reached the Tower of London, the crowds had grown thicker. Tourists with maps and phones, kids running with snacks in hand, guides holding small flags and talking into microphones. But Ryan moved through them like a ghost. He didn't look at the tower. He didn't take pictures. He just followed the river. The reflections here were sharper. He stopped at the edge again, just before Tower Bridge, and leaned over. Now, something was definitely different. He saw people, not just shadows, walking across the bridge in the reflection. But they weren't the same people on the real bridge above. Their clothes were old-fashioned. Some wore long coats and hats. One woman held an umbrella, even though it wasn't raining. Their steps were slow, deliberate. But on the real bridge, the crowd was modern: phones, backpacks, hoodies. The reflection had another time inside it. Ryan stared, frozen. A small chill ran down his back. He blinked. The river rippled. A boat passed by, cutting the reflection in half. When the water settled again, the strange figures were gone. He looked around. No one else noticed. No one looked twice at the water. He took a long breath, then crossed the bridge. Each step felt heavier now. The city was still alive with noise, but Ryan felt like he was listening to something under it, a lower frequency, a quiet song the city sang only to those who really listened. On the other side of the river, he walked through cobbled streets and quieter corners. The buildings here were older. Brick and stone and history. He found himself in a small alleyway that led back toward the river. It opened into a hidden courtyard with no one else around. There was a bench. He sat. And for the first time that day, he closed his eyes. The sound of the river filled his ears. Gentle. Deep. Steady. In his mind, he saw the reflection again, the shadow that moved, the door at the top of the tower, the people in old clothes. None of it made sense. But all of it felt true. He opened his eyes again. And there, across the water, on the side of a glass building, was a perfect mirror, not of the river, but of him. Ryan. Standing. But not sitting. In the reflection, he was upright. Staring back. His reflection raised a hand. Ryan didn't. The image dropped its arm. Then vanished. His chest tightened. He stood quickly, heart racing. The moment was gone. But something had shifted. He wasn't scared. Not really. But he knew, whatever the river was trying to show him, it wasn't finished yet. He had to keep walking. Ryan's footsteps echoed softly on the cobblestones as he left the quiet courtyard behind. The air was cooler now, and a soft breeze carried faint sounds of the city, distant horns, chatter from cafes, the hum of London life. But inside Ryan's head, the river's reflections still played like a movie he couldn't pause. He walked toward a small bridge called Millennium Bridge. From here, the view was different. The river stretched wide, and the city skyscrapers reached for the sky like glass giants. Yet, despite the modern scene, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that the past was whispering to him. As he crossed the bridge, he noticed a small old bookshop tucked under an archway. The sign was faded but still readable: Stories and Shadows. On a sudden impulse, Ryan stepped inside. The shop smelled like old paper and secrets. Shelves lined with dusty books rose high, and the soft light made the dust float like tiny stars. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with silver hair and glasses, looked up and smiled gently. Without saying a word, the man handed Ryan a thin, worn book. On its cover, just a single word, Reflections. Ryan opened it carefully. Inside, the pages were filled with stories about London, tales of times long past, mysterious places, and hidden worlds that existed alongside the city's busy streets. As Ryan flipped through, a photo caught his eye. It was a black and white picture of the Thames. But the river in the photo had a door, exactly like the one Ryan had seen in the water's reflection. He looked up. The shopkeeper was watching him closely. Some places, the man said softly, are more than they seem. The river carries memories, shadows of what was and what could be. Ryan nodded slowly, feeling a strange connection to the old stories. Maybe this city was alive in a way he hadn't understood before, not just buildings and people, but layers of time and mystery, hidden just beneath the surface. He left the shop with the book in his hand, the late afternoon sun warming his face. The city lights began to twinkle on the river's edge, and Ryan walked back along the Thames path. Each step was quieter now. The world felt both bigger and smaller at once. He was a small part of a story that stretched across centuries, a story that still unfolded in the reflections of water and glass. When Ryan reached his starting point, he paused and looked down at the river one last time. The door in the reflection was gone. Only the city remained, bright, alive, and waiting. He smiled. Today had been more than a walk. It was a journey into the heart of a city that never truly sleeps, a city that holds secrets for anyone willing to see them. And Ryan knew, he would be back. To walk again. To look again. To discover what else the river might show him. Because some stories don't end. They just wait for the next person to find them. Thank you for joining Ryan's walk along the Thames today. You've just experienced how stories can help you learn English naturally, picking up useful phrases and expressions without even trying. This is the power of storytelling. It makes learning fun, easy, and memorable. If you liked this story, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends. Your support helps us create more exciting stories every day. Also, don't forget to leave a comment below. Tell us what city you want to explore next or share your own favorite travel memory. We can't wait to hear from you.